Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live Q&A. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I redo every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world, so busy folks like you don't have to. And then I compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical finds and new videos and articles I upload nearly every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved with evidence-based nutrition. I'm coming to you live from my treadmill in Philadelphia. Now I'm stopped reading nutrition journals for the time being and now reading the 300 new papers published every day now, our whole research team on COVID-19 and relating pandemic issues. And that's just what's coming out of PubMed. There are preprints, biological and medical every day as well, trying to stay on top of those to bring you the latest amidst all the chaos and confusion of the latest in science-based information. Yesterday, I gave a 4-hour free webinar to 11,000 people. I'm sorry if you missed it, but don't worry. All the information is going to be in a series of videos, 17 videos up at nutritionfacts.org, starting at the end of the month and running through July. Hope to answer any questions you may have today or for COVID-19 or lifestyle medicine, or anything else you want to talk about. One last note before I get to your questions. Yesterday, a new book came out. My book, a 600-page book with 3,600 references. How to Survive a Pandemic, where I draw on all my infectious disease public health background, which is what I was doing first half of my professional life before I jumped over to lifestyle medicine because nobody was listening. Shouting from the rooftops about the next pandemic. Nobody wanted to listen. Now I have a feeling people are a little more open to hearing about pandemic preparedness and prevention. All right, let's get to your questions. Ashley Reynolds asks, what do we think about taking chromium picolinate for someone who's been diagnosed with insulin resistance? Chromium in whole food form, meaning brewer's yeast, which is a good source of chromium, does indeed reduce fasting blood sugars, but does not actually affect long-term hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of kind of long-term blood sugars, and chromium doesn't help. Chromium supplements themselves, outside of brewer's yeast, don't even help with the blood sugar. With the fasting blood sugar. So the answer is no to your question, Helen. What are my thoughts on adaptogens? Adaptogen is just kind of a made-up term by woo-woo practitioners, but I can talk about particular plants. I see you have chaga mushrooms in that list, which I talked about in my series on oxalates and greens. You could increase your risk of kidney stones by eating too much chaga mushroom tea. Daniel asked, what do I think about roasting chickpeas? Ooh, sounds delicious. Do the AGEs go up to a point it might be healthier to avoid doing so? Okay, well, who knows how you make glycotoxins, AGEs, advanced glycation end products? You do that with high protein, high fat foods, primarily. So it's primarily meat, chicken nuggets, roasted hot dogs, that kind of thing. But what else has high fat, high protein? Soy food. So you don't want to blacken tofu, Cajun blackened tofu. Not a good idea. And same thing with nuts. Roasting nuts. What's in nuts? Protein and fat. Not a good combo with the dry heat. Create these AGEs. What are chickpeas? Protein, basically no fat, right? Soybeans are oil seeds, high fat content. Chickpeas are not. Roast away. It sounds delicious. Just don't put salt on them. But there's all sorts of wonderful salt-free mixes, one of which is featured in my cookbook, the How Not to Die cookbook. And what an opportunity for a plug for my next cookbook, How Not to Diet cookbook, coming out this December for everyone on your holiday shopping list. Check it out. And of course, all proceeds I receive from Almond Books are donated to charity. All right, next, what we got? Helen asks, is it true that you'd have to eat almost a half a kilo flaxseed daily just to get half a gram of DHA? If so, is it better to have omega-3s from algae? No, it is not true. In fact, that'd be too much flaxseed from a cyanide perspective. I've got videos on all that, on the cyanide content of flax seeds, how much is too much. I talk about omega-3s. 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds a day gives you about 2.2 grams of ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, which your body can then elongate to those long-chain omega-3s. The question is, can it do enough for optimal health? Unanswered research question. So I suggest people consider taking preform DHA from a pollutant-free source, yeast or algae. And I've got videos on all that as well. Martina says, should I resend my middle schooler to school in September, living in Rome, Italy, or better to do online schooling? Children are thankfully spared in large part from this current pandemic, both from infection risk and from suffering a severe course, which is unlike influenza, where school children play a critical role in the spread of the flu in the population. Not so with COVID-19. And so before college students go back, I would send young school children back to school. But of course, even though they don't play a major role in infection, the concern would be they could potentially pass the disease on to someone who's elderly or frail. And so that would be the concern, not so much for their health, but for anyone they may come in contact with. But I of all parts of the population to open back up, school children back to school would be among the first on the list. Elizabeth H., do air fryers create acrylamide? Have other negative effects on foods? Well, they do in acrylamide forming foods, so crispy carbs. So if you high dry heat, such as making crackers or French fries, potato chips, that kind of thing, you can create acrylamide. But it's not clear whether acrylamide is a human carcinogen or not. And so I have videos talking about, updated videos talking about whether or not acrylamide actually turned out to be human carcinogen at all. I think it still may be for endometrial cancer, but not some of the others we were worried about. But don't quote me on that. You'd have to watch the video. I've got so many thousands of videos now, it's hard even for me to remember it all. Fred GRS, hey, Dr. Geiger, thanks a lot for what you share with us. You are so welcome, Fred. What about eating a source of probiotics every day? Well, you do if you're eating raw fruits and vegetables. You're actually eating, even if you're washing your fruits and vegetables, you are getting good gut bacteria. That's how you make sauerkraut. You don't add a starter, but just the lactic acid producing bacteria on the leaves, out in the cabbage in the field has those, but they should be wiped out by your stomach acid. But the most important thing we can do for good gut health is prebiotics, feeding the good gut bacteria we already have. You don't need new bacteria, you just need to foster the growth of the good ones. What are prebiotics? Fiber and resistant starch. Where are they found? Concentrated mostly in whole intact grains and legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. Check them out. Delicious. Okay, what else do we have? Helen, why is iodine important? And what's an accessible way to get iodine in plant-based diet? I know you mentioned types of seafood, but I don't know how to include those in regular meals. Iodine is important because it is an essential mineral, meaning you don't have it, you die. But iodine is found in the soil around much of the world. And so just by eating regular foods, now in Northern Europe, oh, no, that's selenium. Never mind. Take it back. The problem is you don't know whether the soils that the crops that you're eating in actually has enough iodine. So that's why I encourage people to add a concentrated source of iodine in their diets, just to make sure they're getting enough. This is particularly important for pregnant women for which iodine deficiency can cause a condition called cretinism, which would be a very bad idea. What are the concentrated source? The healthiest source, it would be sea vegetables. And you say, wait a second, I don't know how to fit sea vegetables in my daily routine. All right, well, dulse flakes. So dulse is this pretty purple seaweed, then it's flaked, and it comes in a little canister. You shake it on foods. It's a relatively unseaweedy tasting seaweed, very mild flavor. And I have videos talking about exactly how much dulse to have. RMA makes like noodles. It's great for soup. Nori sheets. You know, they make sushi out of. You can chew on those as a snack. Super cheap. Has like 4 calories a sheet, packed with trace minerals, and it's a dark green leafy vegetable as a snack. Amazing. Kids love them. Check it out. So 2 of those sheets a day, and get all the iodine you need. So you need about 150 micrograms a day. Easy, no problem, and super healthy anyway. Go for it. Okay. Oh, and if you are taking a prenatal vitamin, which you should, during pregnancy, make sure it has iodine in it. Not all of them do, which is pretty outrageous. Elizabeth H. says, doesn't matter what size we cut garlic in order to have that beneficial chemical reaction. The more you cut it, the more you crush it, the more that beneficial allicin is created. So smush that garlic. Smush it. Vegan Trouble asks, is there anything I can do to help with idiopathic chronic pancreatitis? I am a non-smoker, teetotaler, I guess, and eat a whole food plant-based diet. Well, it's in the name, idiopathic, meaning we have no idea what causes it. Excuse me, until we do, until we know what the cause is, you can't treat the cause, which is the best way to treat anything. Trying to think anything offhand. I have to go through the list. There is a list of things that can cause idiopathic chronic pancreatitis in terms of risk factors. You just go down the list and see if you're on any of them. I know a number of medications can do it, but nothing. So yeah, I go online and just go down the list. But unfortunately, if it truly is idiopathic, nothing we can do about it because we don't know what the cause is. Okay, Elizabeth H., what do you think about getting vitamin C intravenously? Oh, I've got wouldn't it be great if I had a whole series of videos on intravenous vitamin C? I do, check them out. Also, vitamin B12 shots, no need of B12 under the tongue, sublingual B12, or chewed B12, or sprayed B12. It can be just as bioavailable in the right dose as injected B12. In fact, around the rest of the world, they even treat B12 deficiency with chewable B12. Not injections. Only in the U.S. to use injections. Why? Because doctors get paid. We are a profit-run system as opposed to the rest of the world. Excuse me. Did 20 interviews yesterday, 10 today, 10 tomorrow. Because it's book launch week, my throat's a little sore. Don't worry. I don't have the illness. At least. I hope not. All right. Aurora. No, Ashley Runnels. One of my thoughts about going on a prenatal when trying to, we just did that. Nailed it. Aurora, Rayon, what a cool name. Anything that can be done for radiation from airline travel. And for those of you thinking, wait a second, radiation from airline travel? What do you mean? Cosmic rays. Check it out. I got videos on it. In fact, I talk about what you can do. And that's one of the reasons why I take kale chips on flights, because I can undermine some of that radiation damage. And so check out my, I think I have 2 videos talking about how I cut down on my radiation. Of course, now I'm cutting down on my radiation because I'm not in planes, because we're in a pandemic. I only got to about 40 of my 200 cities for my speaking tour for How Not to Diet before it all came crashing down. Bianca Million asks, hello, Dr. G. Hello, Bianca. I heard that having blood cancer the last 5 years in immunotherapy treatment put one at high risk for COVID-19. Having blood cancer, is that true? I'm in treatment for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2018. I have not heard that at all. No, I have not heard that. Although that's such a specific thing, maybe it does exist and I somehow missed it. But if you email me, I can look it up for you specifically. But I did not come across that. In fact, cancer in general does not seem to be a predisposing risk factor or cancer treatment, because it's not it's your own immune system that causes much of the lung damage, not the virus itself. And that's why being immunosuppressed does not actually put you at greater risk for dying from this virus, as opposed to most other viruses. And the same thing with the other deadly coronavirus outbreaks, SARS and MERS. Those who were immunosuppressed either through drugs, chemotherapy, or disease were not at higher risk of a severe course. Hashimoto's and histamine intolerance. What the heck can I eat? I have some videos on Hashimoto's coming out. Unfortunately, all my new videos got pushed back because all of a sudden I have to do all 17 COVID-19 videos. That'll be done in July, and then we'll go back to the nutrition stuff. And Hashimoto's is one of them. Stay tuned. GD asks, am I doing any more research on the effects of amla and LP-little-a? There is no more research on amla and LP-little-a. Everything there is to know about LP-little-a, I covered in the 2 videos that I just put up. Rebecca L says, what can be done about hair loss in early 20s? The same thing you do about anything. Treat the cause. What is the cause? You need to find out. So I'd go to a dermatologist when you can, find out if there's something. There's all sorts of things that can cause hair loss. Weight loss itself can cause temporary hair loss, on down the list. So you just got to find out what it is, treat the cause. Patricia Haney says, how long does it take to lower blood pressure on whole food plant-based diet? Within days. That's why it's critically important that that if you're on blood sugar lowering medications or blood pressure lowering medications, you only start eating healthier under supervision from your medical professional, because your body heals so quickly, you'll rapidly find yourself over medicated. And for blood pressure lowering pills, you can drop your blood pressure so low, you can get dizzy, fall over in the shower, hurt yourself, or worse. So critically important that your doctor removes drugs as your body heals on its own. And both patients and doctors alike underestimate the power of a healthy diet to so rapidly improve one's health that it's very important to take that seriously. MF asked, what are my thoughts on alternate day fasting during the pandemic? I have in fact, the largest chapter of How Not to Diet is on all types of fasting. I talk about all the different types of intermediate fasting, including alternate day fasting. And in a pandemic or not, it's not a good idea, because at least in women, increasing cholesterol over the same amount of caloric restriction on a chronic basis. And we don't want to do anything to increase our cholesterol, critical risk factor for the number one killer in the United States for the last 100 years, from 1919 to 2019, the number one killer of Americans, heart disease. The exceptions being 1918 and 2020, thanks to pandemic disease. BMM4G asks, for people with autonomic dysfunction who are recommended by doctors to eat sodium to boost blood pressure and raise blood volume, what would be the healthiest way to do that? That's a good question. That is a good question. Well, so the one source of sodium that is not associated with the 2 things that we care about, that we're worried about with sodium, the 2 reasons that we don't want to eat sodium: stomach cancer and high blood pressure. High blood pressure being, one of the top risk factors for death on planet Earth, killing millions of people every year. You don't have to worry about that if your pressures are low, but it can also cause arterial dysfunction and, as I mentioned, stomach cancer. But there's one source of sodium that does not appear to do either, and that's miso, which is a fermented whole soy food that's high in sodium. And so that's why I use miso to make food salty without suffering the adverse consequences in my How Not to Diet cookbook and my upcoming How Not to Diet cookbook in December 2020. Shriosh J276 says, hi, doc. My friend has PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. There are various myths regarding soy food. She's concerned, can soy food help in PCOS? I got a video on that. Check it out. Specifically on soy and PCOS. Rebecca L., what can I do about constant dehydration? You know what you can do about constant dehydration. Hydrate. That was easy. Spin Freaks, Pole and Fitness says, hello from the Isle of Man. I wonder how things are doing on the Isle of Man these days. My question, would you ever use namak? KLA space NAMAK? I would tell you all about it if I knew what you were talking about. I have no idea what namak is. MF says, thoughts on alternate data? Oh, we already did that. Diane Reeder says, well, adding a carbon filter to a cloth face mask makes the mask more effective. Carbon filter, like an activated carbon filter? Certainly, the more layers, the better, in terms of, unless, of course, you can't breathe through it, in which air leaks from the sides, kind of defeats the purpose. Carbon filter, the primary reason that we wear cloth face mask coverings is to protect other people. It's a sign of respect. You're not protecting yourself with a cloth mask. You're protecting others because it protects them from your respiratory droplets, which are spewed out of your mouth, not just when you're coughing and sneezing, but when you're talking, when you're breathing. And for 48 hours before you start showing symptoms, you feel perfectly fine. You look perfectly fine, but maybe exhaling virus from every breath. But you cut that down if you have something over your face. That's what does it. And whether or not a carbon filter would cut down further on that, it's adding another layer, presumably to cut down a little bit more, but nothing I would spend money on unless unless we had data suggesting that's effective. Hi, Michael says, Ruidush, is there a link between DHA and prostate cancer? When is your video on the topic coming up? DHA and prostate cancer. Oh, if I promised there'd be a video on DHA and prostate cancer, it's coming or it's already done. I don't remember it. But let me see. I just did. Oh, I'm on Parkinson's. I go through the alphabet. So I'm right before prostate cancer. So it'll be coming soon in terms of the next batch of videos that come up. Okay. Where are we? Next one, Christine K. My LDL is over 100. That's not good. Is it okay for me to do Dr. Longo's FMD, fasting mimicking diet, as there is a lot of fat? Well, but the fat is like DHA. It's not saturated fat. So I would assume it wouldn't increase your LDL. I wouldn't worry about that. But as I say in my video about Longo's fasting mimicking diet, I think there's healthier ways to achieve the same end, and they're cheaper too. Patricia Haney is back saying, at what level of high blood pressure should I be on medication? Oh, I just had a video. In fact, one of my most recent videos is talking about the new high blood pressure recommendations and exactly what we can do about it. And so check that out. Laura Nikorsky says, are lecithin supplements bad for your heart? Yes. Why? Because lecithin is turned by bad bacteria into trimethylamine, oxidized by your liver into TMAO, which can ravage your arteries. KGD says, can a plant-based diet affect ankylosing spondylitis or improve the effects without antibiotics? Oh, what a great question. There actually is. People have been asking about AS for a while now. We had no data, but finally, in the new disease reversal journal, we have a good case report, and it's coming up, a video coming up. Stay tuned. And the answer, spoiler alert, yes, it can help. What a concept that an anti-inflammatory diet can help with inflammatory condition. Mandy Brooks says, hello, Dr. Gregory. Is kelp safe as an iodine supplement if taken in very small amounts? Like a quarter teaspoon? That is not a small amount. Oh my God. Have you seen my videos? That's why people shouldn't eat kale, period. Because you can so easily exceed the recommended upper daily limit of iodine and get thyroid toxicosis. Not a good thing. Stay away. K.A. Resnick says, how do we safely wash delivered packages of fresh fruits and vegetables? Protects our families during the COVID pandemic. That sounds clinomaniacal. Do not worry about delivered food, delivered packages. There's a theoretical risk if someone is infectious, handled, coughs in their mouth, coughs in their hands, doesn't wash your hands or sanitize your hands, then touches the surface, and then you touch that same surface soon afterwards, and then use your unwashed hands to touch your mucous membranes, eye, nose, and mouth, you could get infected. And early on, there were so many question marks as to exactly how this disease is transmitted. But now we know the primary mode of transmission is these respiratory droplets, coughed out, breathed out, sneezed out, talked out from close, indoor, crowded contact, confined space. That's where most of this transmission is happening. It's not from fomites. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the CDC just changed their language to emphasize that the indirect transmission through fomites is not the primary mode of transmission. Yes, wash your hands when you come in contact with something coming into your house. You can throw away the external packaging, etc. But we now have months of data from people that have no exposed contact with people out of their household, just getting delivered groceries and delivered food. And guess how many cases of infection that have come out because of that? 0 published cases, not a single case report in the entire literature. You'd think that would make news. And the fact that there isn't a single report makes me confident that is extremely low risk. Okay. Protect yourself. Okay. Yeah, K.A. Resnick. How do we save? Oh, we did that one. Leanne A. How do you discuss cooking, sauteing with alcohol? Does it really cook off any risks? Is there alcohol in wine vinegar? There's no alcohol in wine vinegar. Any vinegar is fantastic because it's acetic acid. It has all sorts of benefits. I have a whole chapter on that and how not to diet. And indeed, when you saute with alcohol, the alcohol completely disappears. When I say saute in alcohol, I'm talking about sauteing with wine, like cooking sherry or something. All the alcohol completely gassed off by the time. So the boiling point of alcohol is much lower than water. So if something's bubbling, boiling, that has water in it, I mean, if it's hot enough for the water to boil off, the alcohol is already gone by then. So yeah, there is wine in my house. I don't drink, but I use it to cook with because I like to flavor it in parts, particularly to like pasta sauce. So yeah, I saute my garlic and onions in a deep red wine, get some great phytonutrients in there. All the alcohol cooks out, so you don't have to worry about acetaldehyde, the carcinogen that comes from drinking alcohol, because you aren't drinking alcohol because it's all gone. And I think we can get to at least 1 or 2 more. Leanne A says, I heard recently that you can ferment without salt. What? Would that be green light? Yes. Yeah, so you can actually, I found a source, for example, of olives, salt-free olives. Olives are fantastic, but they're too high in salt, so I don't eat them. But I love olives, so there is some kind of fermentation way they can actually debitter olives without salt. And I ordered them. This is before the pandemic. They never arrived. I don't know what exactly happened to them. So I've never actually tried them, but had high hopes. But yeah, the primary reason that I'm concerned about fermented foods, like sauerkraut, is because of the salt content. Remove the salt content. Eat all the cabbage you want. Okay, Carrie Smith says, hi, Dr. Kreger. My doctor suspects I have Hashimoto's. Told me not to eat gluten until you see a specialist. What grains can you eat? Well, the gluten-containing grains are wheat, barley, rye. You can stay away from those and stay away from gluten, but I would not suspect that would help at all with your Hashimoto's. Leanne A. does chopping and dehydrating veggies, then storing at room temperature cause endotoxins to produce like pre-chopping, just freezing, slow pre-chopping endotoxins. Yeah, so endotoxins, if you remember, are these the components of bacterial cell walls that build up from food spoilage organisms, but basically, a dehydrating process should stop spoilage. So does freezing. So yeah, anything that stops bacterial growth would stop the formation of endotoxins. And unfortunately, time is up for this Q&A. I'll be doing Q&As, of course, every month. I've got another webinar on B12 next month. New book out yesterday. Check it out, How to Survive a Pandemic. All proceeds of which from all my books are all donated to charity. Have a fantastic day and stay safe.